Mandy Moore plays matriarch Rebecca on NBC's This Is Us and just landed her first Emmy nomination, which is so exciting. I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor here at Gold Derby. Mandy, first of all, congrats on your Emmy nomination. Talk us through the morning of.
Thank you so much. I had the day off from work, so I went to exercise, to just kind of get out of my head and not think about the morning. We're 54 episodes in, 3 seasons in, so what was top of mind was just my fingers crossed for the rest of my cast and for our show to get some sort of recognition, because it's such a fun party to be invited to, the Emmys. So I went to this exercise class, and by the time I got out, I waited till I got to my car to look at my phone, and I had like 65 text messages or something. And my immediate instinct was, oh no, oh God, did something happen? And I also thought, I was like, oh, maybe the show didn't get nominated, which is fine, but what a bummer. And maybe it's just people reaching out to say they were sorry or something. And the first message that I happened to look at was from my husband. And he said, "You did it," with an exclamation point. And I literally couldn't compute what that meant. So I called him and I was like, what's the text message about? He's like, "No, you did it." I was like, "Did what?" He's like, "You were nominated." I'm like, "Wait, the show was nominated?" He's like, "No, you were." So I was just like, to say it was unexpected is a massive, massive understatement.
Yeah, and I had the pleasure of talking to you last year and thinking, Mandy Moore is shooing for a nomination, and unfortunately it didn't happen. And I was like, it's one of those ones where I was thinking, that really sucked, it didn't happen, but oh well, it's not the end of the world. So this year, for it to happen just a little delayed, must have felt really nice, right? Like, it's what's been the feedback on the set? Because 7 actors from the show have been nominated, some guests, but that's incredible.
I know, it's unheard of. Honestly, this stuff is never expected. I don't care what people say. It's so crazy. I've been in this business for 20 years. This is not something that I ever expected. It's not ever something I was working towards. And like you said, 7 actors, and last year it was sort of similar in the first year. I think it just speaks to the remarkable elevated writing that we have. It's just, a show like ours is able to attract incredible guest stars like Phylicia Rashad and Gerald McCraney and Griffin Dunn. And the likes of just like these remarkable actors who want to come and play with us. And I hope that will continue. And, we're episode 3 into season 4 already. And I feel like we're just continuing along that trajectory.
Yeah, it's really nice. So just in case anyone was wondering, it's Milo, Sterling, Chris, Michael Angarano, Ron Cephas-Jones, and Phylicia Rashad. That's a really nice group of people to be nominated. And you know what else? You guys keep winning the SAG Ensemble Prize as well. So there's obviously an affection that actors have for this show. Why do you think that is?
Oh my gosh. It's pretty mind-blowing. This SAG award 2 years in a row is just like, it's such a beautiful thing to be able to share as a cast, because it really does, with a show like this, like, it is truly an ensemble. And I feel like as an actor, you have no choice but to sort of step up, and every actor that you're in a scene with is raising the bar, and you're like just clawing your way to try and keep up with them. I hope that it's sort of a message of, our peers in the industry, appreciating the work that we're lucky enough to get to do. I don't know. It's, like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years, and this is absolutely the best job I've ever had. And I recognize it will probably be the best job I ever have in my career. I'm appreciating every second of it, but it is like, it continues to be like soul fulfilling and a challenge every day. And we are truly a family, as we have been from like kind of the jump. So it's like, it's such a treat to continue to go to work, but also like, you're never asleep at the wheel with This Is Us. Like, none of us are. It's like we have to constantly show up. And I mean, I feel like specifically the specific challenge that I have playing Rebecca and jumping from every single decade. I think in season 3, I played her from 16, which was insane, to 85. So it's like I constantly am just like churning in this in the work, you know, not to get too heady about it, but it's a constant challenge, and I'm delighted by it every day.
See, I don't think many people fully appreciate that you are playing her in different time periods. And so you get to put on the makeup and you have the costumes and the hairstyling, but a lot of it is actually in your performance, which I was actually noticing in particular this season. Is there anything that you can point to that you're doing to be the different Rebeccas?
I mean, I think most specifically for me, is the physicality of present day Rebecca, who's about 68, 69 at this point. It's just like a slight hunch, which I kind of already have naturally. There's a little bit more groundedness to her. When we first started season 1, episode 2, where this iteration of Rebecca is introduced, and the very first scene they made me shoot was opposite Ron Cephas Jones. Not kind. I was so nervous. But I thought a lot, I worked towards it and thought a lot about, you know, the physicality that a woman at that juncture of her life would have, having gone through, you know, losing a spouse, losing a child in childbirth, like being remarried, having grandchildren, having adult children, like just every different color that sort of infiltrated her life. And there's a groundedness, there's an ease and sort of a relaxing into it. And I also like think about like the weird things of like maybe she's got a little arthritis in her hand, and maybe it's not anything anyone picks up on, but they're the kind of the little things that I'm thinking about, like her physicality, her body, where things maybe hurt, where she sort of carries some of her emotions and the things that have burdened her in life. At this point, it's like slipping into an old pair of comfy shoes. When I go through that makeup process and I slap on the wig and I have like her clothes and her little cardigans and stuff on, it's just like I'm immediately transformed. And, you know, it's like my sense memory is, oh, I'm working with Justin or I'm working with Chrissy. Like that's, I only know them as Rebecca in the present day, as their mom. So that helps too.
Is there a particular time period that you is your favorite, that you're most comfortable with, or are you happy just to do whatever the writers tell you to do?
I kind of love them all. I would say Milo and I always laugh because the easiest is, you know, relatively speaking, is when the kids are, you know, have been like 8, 9, 10, now they're 12. Yeah. That time period, because there's a little more levity. Jack and Rebecca are, you know, for the most part in a really good place in their marriage. The kids are growing up and they're starting to get into the preteen years, which are maybe a little messier for them. But that's always like, it's easy in hair and makeup. It's not a ton to think about in that regard. The 70s are also that way too, because it's sort of young love and just a woman who's sort of on the brink of figuring out who she is and the world is her oyster. I'd say, you know, what is not most difficult, but like certainly like not the most exciting place to live is Rebecca post Jack's passing, which is where we spent a lot of last season. You know, her grappling with life as a single parent and having lost the superhero parent, and just sort of, picking up the pieces of her life and trying to step up and be there for her kids while she's, you know, dealing with her own enormous grief.
Yeah, that's actually critical to how we follow her journey last season. So, because, Jack was the super dad, and Rebecca had to then come into her own as the super mum. And what I found really interesting was she became quite the grounding presence in the show. Like, I don't know if that was intentional, but that's how I felt her journey progressed over the season. I'm wondering, given that that's like a lot of mothers in families tend to be the grounding presence, do you draw from your own life or any other inspiration in trying to create that vibe?
Sure. I think I'm really happy that season 3 allowed everyone to sort of come to the realization, most of all her adult children, that mom really was and is the glue of this family. I think, in speaking in generalizations, moms sort of often are the unsung heroes of the family and don't get all of the credit that they deserve. And I definitely draw inspiration from my own mom and other mothers that I'm lucky enough to be surrounded by in my life. I think in that sense, and it's what the appeal of the show is, Rebecca is not an anomaly. She's all of us. She's all of the moms out there. There's nothing like innately special about her necessarily, but that is what makes her special. She's everything for her family. Her family is always first. So in that sense, I'm glad that people really dogged her for the first 2 seasons, and I have such affection for who she is, and the fact that like all of these characters are human and they're fallible and they make mistakes, and she has certainly made choices that I don't agree with personally, but she's trying her level best, as we all kind of are in life, and I think that's what again is the trick of the show, and it's why people continue to have such affection for these characters in the story.
Absolutely, and the thing is, there's not a lot of shows like This Is Us that kind of makes you feel. It's a very feeling type of show, and I think that's another reason why the actors branches of whatever academies and so forth have really taken to the show, because actors are people and they have feelings, and so I just think that it's that's been the hit. That's why this show is such a hit for people, because it makes us feel. And we've talked about that before, how we cry at every episode. I cry all the time watching the show, thinking, "My God, what is going on here?" I usually don't cry, but this one kills me. And I'm just it brings me to this. So I'm told that the episode that you're choosing as your submission to the Emmy voters is episode 14, The Graduates. That's a really good one. Obviously, that is key to Rebecca kind of coming to terms with her place in her kids' lives as they start to move on. Is that why you chose it? And what were the reasons for why you chose that one?
I mean, it's difficult. There are so many episodes that I'm a fan of, just as a fan of the show. I get to watch my friends and their incredible performances. Lots of times I'm not around to see them, so I watch the show giddily like a fan does. I chose The Graduates because I think it was a real turning point in the life of this character of Rebecca, and therefore the life of her kids. She, I think, really allowed herself to finally recognize that she had not been grieving properly and not acknowledging it and just continuing to trudge along, and her kids were calling her out for it. And I think the juxtaposition of seeing where she is present day, and had it not been for the choices that she made in the past storyline, and 1998, 99, like right after Jack has passed, it just is a good counterbalance for each other. But also just to see this woman at 2 very critical, junctures of her life, I thought was interesting. And there aren't necessarily a ton of episodes this past season that really highlight, both ages.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And like as a parent, it actually does hit a nerve, and I think a lot of perhaps Emmy voters might feel the same way. It was a good choice. I think it was a really, really good choice. But thinking about another highlight that I remember from the season, and particularly after I spoke to the show's composer, Siddhartha Khosla, this really amazingly talented composer. He wrote a song with your husband that you were able to sing in one of the episodes when Rebecca and Jack go on their road trip. Can you talk us through that whole sequence and how special it was for you?
Oh man, I'm so happy that Sid got recognition. I feel like he is the heartbeat of our show. He's almost like another character. I feel like if you like our show to any degree, a great deal of that could be owed to the beautiful score that he's created for us. He really sets the tone in every way. So Sid met my husband and they just became instant pals, and he asked Taylor to help him write the song for my character, which was odd because Taylor started asking me questions. It was the very beginning of last season. He's like, so where is Rebecca at this phase of her life? 23-year-old, let's say she, I don't know, goes out to California. Like, he had more information than I did. Say she goes out to California and maybe she has like an audition for a record label. Like, do you think it's in the vein of Joni? And what do you think she like knows about life and would be singing about? And so it was really, interesting to sort of let him dig into my brain and sort of, share that process with him. But the song, I think, is so beautiful. And it was one of my favorite moments of the season because, it's so intimate, like sitting in an empty car after just facing immense rejection. Essentially, Rebecca's gone to California. She's sung for the record label, and they've basically told her that she's not good enough and, to go back home. And she gets in this car with Jack, and he asks her how it went, and she doesn't really want to talk about it, and he asks her to sing it. And so she's singing this quiet song a cappella in the car, and it's the first time you've ever seen Jack shed a tear on the show, which I thought was really beautiful, because the rest of the series, he's just like stoic and manages to hold it together. So I thought that was a really profound moment for Milo and for his character, but just a really beautiful, intimate, sequence that I think really cements what Jack and Rebecca have found in one another without them even necessarily acknowledging it in the moment. But, the song ends and they sort of look at each other and decide, like, let's go home. And that's it. Like, it's sort of like the permission to live the rest of their life. And who knows where it goes from there. But yeah, it was certainly a real highlight, that moment last year.
Yeah, and given your musical background, it allows you to sing on the show. Would you like to be able to sing more on the show if possible?
I mean, I'm going to leave that up to Dan and the writers. I don't necessarily want to sing just for the sake of singing. I have my own music coming out, and I can sort of like satisfy that desire in me. I think only if it makes sense in a storyline, and perhaps there's some singing in the next season, just a little bit. But again, I think it makes the most sense in the early years of Jack and Rebecca sort of figuring out what she wants to do with her life. And maybe I have a hope that Rebecca finds music again after Jack's passing. I don't know when, but I just have this hope that, I want to see her happy. And obviously we know come 2008, she meets up with Miguel again, and hopefully they're able to have some sort of companionship and find love again to a certain degree. But I also hope that includes a bit of a musical journey for her too.
Yes, and that would be emblematic of her happiness and so forth. But I'm really keen to find out more about the Miguel relationship, and I'm hoping that that's where we're headed. What do you reckon?
Me too. I would say that there's definitely going to be more Miguel and Rebecca post Jack, like 98, 99, that era, and him sort of stepping in to fill Jack's shoes and being there for the family as a best friend would. I think the more interesting storyline of learning just how Rebecca and Miguel find their way together a decade later is probably going to be more of season 5, what I've been told from Dan Fogelman.
So speaking of season 4, you're up to episode 3 you mentioned earlier, but do you have a sense of where the season's going to go for your character, and are you excited? What can you tell us, if anything at all?
I do know where the season is going for Rebecca and most people. It's funny, you walk into the writer's room for the show, and it's like Homeland. There's like a whiteboard, like scribbling everywhere. It's like practically on the ceiling. It's like they've taken over the entire room, just like with story ideas and pieces of paper. And I'm excited because, you know, like usual, we're jumping all around. I mean, sort of starting in the like immediate aftermath of Jack and Rebecca getting home from that infamous road trip out to California, and how they're going to proceed in their life together, and potentially Jack meeting her parents. And then we're kind of jumping into some time with the kids at 12, like the sort of pesky preteen years where you know, maybe Jack and Rebecca aren't as successful with helping the kids out of certain predicaments in their life as they had been when the kids are younger. And so it's like recognizing that the kids are starting to grapple with these big issues in their life that are going to lead to bigger issues as they continue to grow up, and mom and dad aren't able to sort of reach them in the same capacity anymore. I also know that we're going to be visiting Randall in college, and hopefully Randall and Beth, and potentially her mom again. There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, you know, with our show, it's and we have a new baby too. We have a little baby Jack that was born last season. So the present day story is going to focus on him coming home, and, you know, Rebecca and Miguel have moved out to California and to be closer to Kate and Toby and Kevin, and just, you know, a closer, happy family with a new baby. So there's so much to explore. I've said this a couple times before already to some press, but the first episode is, I mean, I feel like we all have carte blanche to ask the writers anything, and we know what's coming for the most part. But this first episode in particular is so beautiful and really cracks open a different dimension almost to our show. It's really elevated, and I'm so excited to see it again as a fan, because there are multiple storylines that I have no involvement in, and I'm so excited to see it myself and for the world to see it. It's just, I can't believe that we continue, like Dan Fogelman and our writers continue just like upping their game.
I am really looking forward to that. It's therapy for me. It's therapeutic, that show, and I'm looking forward to it learning. But speaking of looking forward to it, we look forward to the Emmys. We've seen you in that room. You're nominated. Congratulations. You might win. Thank you so much, Mandy, for your time. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.